in the bucket, and you'll be here, and people will have jobs to do. There'll be some sawdust inside the lid. You'll put the lid on carefully. You'll have gloves on to do it, and then you'll move away. And we'll pick people to do these jobs, okay?
Okay, how do I do that? So this is my workspace. I don't do any work in the main studio. This is my workspace. I work here alone. If I need an assistant to help me do something, they'll come in and work with me in here. So I do all my throwing, all my decorating, all my glazing in here. So take a look around, and then I'll share a little bit more, and you can ask me questions. So you can see that there's finished work, there's bisque fired work, there's greenware that has yet to be fired. These are my wheels. So just to back up, my first studio, I graduated from graduate school, Rhode Island School of Design in 1975. I started my first studio a year later, once I found a place to work. And this is the 4th location and the 5th space that I've been in. I moved into this building in 1989, renting a space from the owner of the building, and then purchased it from him in 2006, did the development 2007 through 2009, and the building, we had our grand opening in 2009. And it was quite a project, and in many ways a dream come true. I don't know any artist in any media that would not want to own their space, because of all the professions and all the people out there working in other spaces other than their homes. Artists' spaces are the least secure. The typical scenario is that artists will find a building or find an area, they'll develop it into their artist studios and galleries, and then a developer will come along and see, wow, this is a great idea. They purchase it, they throw the artists out, and it becomes luxury condominiums. And here we are having to find another space someplace else. So artists are at the bottom of the pecking order when it comes to being able to afford space and being able to find space. So that's the kind of the origin of the Gorse Mill Studios. Okay, so a little tour. So this is the main workspace. This is where all of our members work. Nobody has their own space except for my assistants. They work in those spaces there. Everything else is open and shared. There has to be a lot of respect for other people's work and understanding and respect of people's personal space. People don't come here to socialize. They come here to work. They're serious. A lot of socializing takes place. But in order for somebody to be a studio member, in order for somebody to function well in this space and be compatible with everybody else, they have to understand that the first and foremost reason that we're here is to make work. Some of the people that are members, including some of my staff, are legitimate professional potters, meaning that they are selling their work and doing their best to make a living from the sale of their work or from other aspects of clay. Most of the people that work here are not doing this to make a living or to pay the bills. They're doing it because they're very serious. And being labeled a professional does not rest on whether you are selling your work or making your living. For me, and I wrote a whole book about this, being a professional potter is about your commitment to the craft, and it's about how serious you are about it. It's not about how often you do it. It's not about whether you're selling your work. It's not about whether you have work in museum collections or books or magazines or newspapers. It's about how serious you are.
I've noticed.
So do I?
I mean, unless you don't have a sweatshirt. If you don't have a sweatshirt on, you're just going to be very far behind. Okay?
If you don't have a sweatshirt, you're supposed to sit down.
Stand in the bucket, but you made the executive decision. Or my gloves.
One day, next time out here.
a big bucket yet. Let it soak a little bit and then get that lid on there. There you go.
Yeah, Maddie.
Oh my god!
So sometimes we wave them to try to get a little more crackle. Try to snap these down a little bit if there's any way to get them tighter. Oh, sweet. Look at this. Look at this. You got that one? Thank you.
It's touching.
Yep. Sweet. Oh, maybe we can use the ring. Anyway, we're good.
Thanks, ladies.
All right. Where's mine? If you guys think the ones that we pulled out there have cooled enough, you can look at them. And then I'm going to load this back up, and that will be our last load, so you can go back in and let all of these cool. And then we'll make buckets for these. Did I leave something in there?
Okay, Javier, this is you and me out there ourselves.
Oh, you don't have it. Can you take this?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I can do this.
Yeah, it's not code operator, right?
Wedging is the most important part of throwing on the wheel. So the clay looks like a spiral. Some people think it looks like a chrysanthemum. It's very rhythmic. You have to know where you are in space all the time. You have to know where you are in relation to the clay. You have to know what part of your hand, arm, fingers is in contact with the clay, because everything affects the shape and the control. So when you've got your arm in there and you're pulling your clay up with your fingers and you're not paying attention to where your wrist is or where your forearm is, if your pot's tall enough, then you could be leaning against it and causing it to bounce and chatter and make a mess. So you need to either lubricate that a little bit, or you need to remove the contact. You need to be in control. Now I throw very, very dry. I use a lot of water in the beginning when I'm centering. I use some water when I make my opening and when I pull the clay up the first couple of times. And then I don't use any water again. So I haven't used any water here in quite a lot of the shaping. But I'll use a little bit of water when I finish the neck and the rim. found and learned that, for me at least, throwing dry is a very, very good way for me to be able to control the clay.
Is there anything below between the foot and the piece? This is what you
Let it drain.
Yep.
Need some big ones.
Alrighty.
We'll do it on a sunny day.
Well, you guys can see that it's not terrible. Whoa. Okay, let it smoke up so you get
Thanks,
that.
Patrick.
Yeah.
What a surprise, Patrick.
What a surprise. Oh, that one.
Oh, that one's beautiful.
Make sure it really flames up, Patrick. Thank you. Oh, wait, close it.
Oh, what?
That's right, I've got an extra right here.
Yeah, there's one over here too. Ooh, core.
Okay, let it really flame up.
Is that yours?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's so cool. Okay, can I
And then jump.
Mine's
Nice.
so you promised me that you're gonna have them clean them off real well.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed.
That's like my
Scrubby.
pet peeve.
in a car. What did you think of the one that
Wait, is it the skinny bottle or
So, I know. So the whole process of Raku, the reason we do this field trip is so that the students can experience firing in a way other than an electric kiln in our classroom. So we start out, we fire the pieces back at school so that they are hardened clay called bisqueware. We bring them here, glaze them, put them into outside kilns, and when they reach red hot and all the glazes are red and shiny, we pull them out of the kilns and put them into a metal garbage can filled with combustibles, encouraging flame. Once you see flames, you put the lid on to extinguish the flame, and the smoke burns all of the glazes. So then you get these really interesting cracks. All of the raw clay turns black, and depending on the glaze, you get some metallics. So it's an effect that we can't do in our kilns that we have at school. They are not necessarily food safe pieces, but they are really interesting to look at. And it's all done in one day. So it's a nice process for the students to come. They don't really have expectations when they show up, and they walk away usually with a smile.